Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Invictus Racing League podcast with me, Gareth, and Sab. Good evening, Sab.
Good evening. It's episode 3 now. It's going along nicely. We're going to have a good chat tonight, aren't we, about the weekend's action and so forth, and the double header as we've got the Austrian Grand Prix coming up as well. So yeah, plenty to talk about this evening.
Yeah. So, as you're saying, we've just gone past the French Grand Prix. We've got the Austrian one coming up pretty quickly already. So we're quite a distance into the season, and we're looking down. As you can, I'm sure you can see, guys, if you are on the stream. But if not, it's essentially we're going to be asking the question tonight: is the championship over already? We're looking at Lewis. We're looking at Mercedes. There's been absolute dominance from them at the moment, and it's going to be interesting to find out Sab's take on where we are in the season. But equally, we saw some other interesting things that we probably haven't seen throughout the rest of the season so far, apart from maybe in the likes of Bahrain, and that was the resurgence of McLaren. They did very nicely this week. We've seen Danny Ricciardo make a questionable move, and the penalties come in once again. So that's two races in a row where the stewards have made decisions about the race which are slightly dubious, and we'll be interested to see if the guys are listening and watching, if they agree with the stewards' ruling, or if they thought that, you know, yeah, it got past, whether it was on track or off track. It's you're taking away the spirit of racing. But yeah, a quick look back at the last week, and we started off, or we did our last podcast last Tuesday, where we talked about the pros and cons of F1 2018. So if you've missed that one, it's on YouTube. Head to Invictus RL on YouTube where you can catch up on that. We then got to Friday. We had FP1 and FP2, and Lando Norris did very nicely on the Friday, didn't he, Sam?
Yes, he was right up there, and he stayed throughout all practices. He stayed within the top 10, and he really looked like a guy settled with this track. He obviously raced at the Paul Ricard circuit last year in F2, and you could tell he was uh, more, like I say, more comfortable with how to get on with the track. He'd not just done sim work on it like Canada, for example. And yeah, Lando had a solid weekend for a rookie, a 19-year-old kid who's bound to be finding it tough at the moment. In recent races, anyway, we had DNF last time out and some struggles. So yeah, it was good to see him bounce back and really show what he's capable of, especially with how that McLaren seemed to settle down so quickly on that track. It really did suit the car.
Well, since as we've started on McLaren, we'll kind of jump in with that, and we'll move on to qualifying and the race later. But we'll talk about McLaren now. And so, obviously, you are one of the McLaren super fans. You know the team pretty well, and I imagine you've watched their progression throughout the season a lot more than I have so far. Where's this pace come from? Do you reckon this is something to do with their updates, or do you think this is track specific and possibly Austria will be a slightly different kind of kettle of fish?
From what I understand, and from the interviews I've read, and the opinions from Zach and the drivers, it does appear to be a track-specific thing. They did look strong in Canada, and they had very bad luck there. They possibly should have scored points if they didn't have that bad luck. But it does seem to be at the minute, and it's strange in the midfield. Certain teams are suiting to certain tracks, and then other teams are just completely off the pace. And today, last weekend I should say, the McLaren. It's good in high-speed corners and fast-flowing tracks, and similar in a way to Canada with its long straights. It's really benefited the Paul Ricard. It's going to be interesting to see how it gets on in Austria. But from what I was reading with Lando and stuff, he was basically saying to try not to get carried away with it, and try not to think that McLaren are back. They're going to be fighting for podiums. None of that. I agree with. It's correct what he's saying. You've got to remain grounded. It was a good weekend. It could have possibly been better for Lando, but it was overall a good weekend for the team, just to show that we can now fight. In the top 10, where a team like McLaren should be up there fighting in the top 10. They should be, based on history, they should be fighting for podiums and potential race wins, but like I say, they're not quite there yet to be able to fight with. But overall, this track really did suit them. And Carlos Sainz, even though Lando got driver of the day, Carlos Sainz drove a superb race to take the home in sixth. He didn't really have many troubles. He did have a niggly problem in his car, similar to Lando, but not quite as severe. But he managed to bring it home in a solid sixth place, and it's good to see the team are scoring more regular points this season than rather trudging along round the back. It'll be a good test in Austria coming up to see if they can score points and be in the top 10 like this again, because then might start to show that these updates they are bringing are working for the car and they are coming along well, because Austria is another fast track which you haven't got much time to think. It's like just over a minute to lap. It's one of those tracks what really does demand a lot out of the car, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they do. But yeah, overall, as a fan, I'm personally delighted with how this weekend went, and hopefully more to come next weekend.
Yeah, I think for the neutral and for the people that are kind of, whether you're new to Formula One or whether you're not, I think it was nice to see McLaren back up the front. I think if you've watched F1 since the turbo hybrid era, and especially with the McLaren Honda, the absolute disaster that went on with those two, that it's nice to see them back up towards the front end of the grid. And I think Lando is a breath of fresh air in Formula One this season, and
Yes.
he brings you can see him with the other drivers, and I think he kind of, whether it's that youthful charm or something, there's something about him that you can see he gets on really well with the others. You can see he gets on really well with Danny Ricciardo. He gets on really well with George Russell, and you even see him on Instagram having a little bit of banter with Kimi Räikkönen. So if you can get the old man
Yeah.
to crack a smile, you know you're doing something good. So
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying. I mean, he is a meme wizard. The fact that he spends his time flying between the two tracks, just creating memes on his
Yeah.
laptop is yeah. I'm really enjoying him. I think he's doing a superb thing, and it is disappointing. We briefly touched on last week about the three rookie drivers so far. Let's say three, with four with Giovinazzi, but with Albon, Russell, and Lando. And we were saying how all three of them are really doing well in their current roles. But I think Lando he's definitely kind of really taken the prestigious seat at McLaren in his stride, and you can
Yeah.
see there's others. You can see George Russell must be incredibly frustrated where he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alex, I reckon, is probably pretty happy with how he's doing, and I think if anything, he's probably shown a lot more promise than what people would have thought. But yeah, Lando is one of those guys. You could see that McLaren always had their eye on him very early on.
Yeah.
He was always talked about being the next Lewis Hamilton when he was coming up through the junior ranks, and then when he was at Carlin and F2, the season didn't quite work out for him. He had a poor end to the F2 season, or the midpoint to the second half of the season wasn't the greatest, and he had a lot of mechanical failures and things like that. But I think, yeah, I'm glad he's managed to make his way up to F1, and hopefully we're not going to see something like what we've seen from McLaren, where they kind of they take on a youngster, they take on a rookie, like we saw with Magnussen, like we saw with Perez and Van Dorn. They kind of give him quite a short window, but luckily it looks like he's kind of, not only is he kind of sitting on the same sort of pace as Carlos, that he seems to have that, I don't know whether it's that team bond with the rest of the mechanics. I'm thinking that they'll probably look to keep that around, because it's probably helping out the team morale.
Definitely, and I think the one thing what feels good from a McLaren point of view for me is this year is the team feels so refreshed. It feels happier. There's a lot more smiles about this team this year. Now, I'm not pointing fingers at certain ex-drivers at the team, but there doesn't seem to be that negativity and that finger pointing like there was in previous years. And it does feel like they've took a good step forward, and now hopefully they can progress on that and start looking forward rather than looking what's behind them. It's like you say with Lando, I think this just a spark there with Lando that I think makes me say they won't be getting rid of him anytime soon. Yeah, I've said that probably in the past about Kevin and Stoffel. Stoffel did superbly, didn't he, in his GP2 days? Kevin, as well, in my opinion, was very unlucky to lose his seat that year when the team decided to go for Fernando instead, because Kevin gave us just as much as Jensen did that year when he was teammates with him. So he was really lucky, and he's proved, Kevin, that he's still in Formula One today with Haas. How good of a driver he is. He regularly finishes ahead of Grosjean, so he has got the talent. But I just think Lando's just there's just something about it. You picked up on it a bit earlier. He's got that bit of talent, and I'm hoping, selfishly from a McLaren point of view, that with the next year too, we can start giving him a car so he can push from seventh, sixth, and fifth. Just push that little bit more, because if we can't start to give him that car, he's going to want to obviously eventually be able to fight for championships. And if we can't give him that, then the bigger teams will probably end up having to come in for him, which, from my selfish point of view, would be devastating. But you couldn't obviously blame him if that was the case. But yeah, I think personally, Lando, he's a big star of the future, and if he carries on the way he is, he's going to gain one hell of a reputation.
Yeah, and I think it's the future for British motorsport is looking pretty bright at the moment. I think this current crop
Yeah,
of young
yeah,
drivers, and Nick saying in the comment, feel bad for George Russell, seems like he's doing everything right, but it's impossible since his car is so bad. And it's
yeah.
true, because you
I
do
agree.
feel awful for George, because he worked so hard to get into F1. Obviously, won the championship in F2 of ART last season, absolutely blew it away. He had a nice fight towards the end of the season, but obviously took it, I think, with 2 races to go. But yeah, I think with if you take Alex, although I know he races under the Thai flag, but obviously half English, half Thai, he it's there's definitely a nice crop of drivers there. And then you look at sort of just below, you've got Jack Aitken, who could theoretically move up to Renault if they're going to look at moving on Hulkenberg. At any point, they already said this weekend that his contract's up at the end of the season. They're not sure if they're going to re-sign or not. So there's plenty of opportunity there. I think the Renault seat next season is going to be very interesting, because there's a number of drivers in the Renault Junior program that could come up, and
Yeah,
Jack Aitken's one of them. But then you got Huang Hao, who is a Chinese driver. So obviously, that's as much as we see drivers get onto the grid because of raw pace, we also see drivers kind of get a seat because they become a huge marketing target for their country.
yeah,
So obviously, we see Sergio Perez get the whole reason why you get the Mexican Grand Prix going so mad, and that's why
yeah.
I'm quite glad that it was actually just been announced in the last few hours that I'm not sure, you're probably not aware of him, because I don't think you watched IndyCar too much, but Patricio O'Ward, he's the Indy Lights champion. He races in IndyCar, but
Right.
he's been signed to the Red Bull Young Driver program quite recently, and he's just been
Okay.
given. He's going to be taking over the MP Motorsport seat for Austria to take over from Mahiva Raghunathan, who is the well, if you haven't watched much F2, whether it be you or the guys watching, I suggest you watch F2 and watch a race with Mahiva, because he really is a sight to behold. He's banned for a race after picking up 9 penalty points in one race. Unfortunately, he didn't slow down under the VSC at all 3 times during the race, so that adds to his penalty points he picked up in Monaco. So yeah, we've got Pato Ward is actually going to be taking his seat for the Austrian race, which is going to be really interesting, because he's sort of seen as the next Mexican superstar, and next sort of Central North American superstar. So that that's going to be like interesting to see how that develops, because I think a lot of teams, especially some like the likes of Toro Rosso, will probably be looking at someone like Pato Ward, because just the buzz that it creates for a young driver from a country like Mexico can bring in some decent sponsorship. And I think if you look at the likes of Sergio, and I don't know, I think recently he was lucky. I think he was lucky to keep his seat at Racing Point for this season, because if you went on driver talent, you'd probably take Ocon over Perez.
Personally, I
Um,
would have done, yes.
yeah, so I think it's going to be an interesting one, because I think there's a lot of young drivers on the cusp of S1, because you've still got Ocon sitting there without a race seat for next season, but George Russell, of course, is a Mercedes young driver. He's going to be eyeing up potentially if they're going to move on Bottas. We don't know, with Bottas is much improved this season, but his contract is coming to a close. So there's potentially Ocon versus George Russell that might open up a seat at Williams for one of them. So yeah, I think young drivers at the moment are gonna be sort of clawing their way to try and get into a race seat for 2020.
I agree with SJD and Nick, by the way. I am a fan of Hulkenberg, and personally, I think they'd be crazy to move Hulk on from Renault. I think he's always been a solid driver there. He's always picked up good points. Yeah, he's struggled this year, but that Renault really progressed much this year, has it? Like a lot of people expected him to. They didn't. I don't think Renault expected McLaren to be ahead of him. That's for sure. And with a few DNFs and stuff, they have really struggled. So it would be crazy if Hulk did get moved on. There's also you talking about drivers moving on. A driver specifically this year, this race weekend, who did struggle a lot was Gasly again in the Red Bull. Max is extremely talented, and he's probably getting the maximum out of that Red Bull Honda, but Gasly just did not look like he was on the pace at all this weekend, and if he's not careful, Helmut Marko can quite easily wield that axe, and Gasly are probably looking for a seat in Formula E or something like that next season. So you've got to think there could be, if Hulk is to move on, there could be a Bull at Renault and Red Bull next season, which could make driver lineups especially interesting next season.
Yeah, big time. I don't know if you want to just quickly check your mic, Sam, because it was peaking a little bit there. I'm not sure if the guys listening had the same thing. It just sounded like it was breaking
Yep,
up a little bit. But
I
yeah,
can
fully
check
agree.
that.
I think I don't know. I'd like to know, evening to all the boys watching at the moment. And SJT says, "How's this? Ocon to Renault to replace Hulk, Hulk to Mercedes to replace Bottas." But I think Hulkenberg is one of those guys that I think will be remembered as one of the like a Trulli, so like a nearly man, because obviously Trulli
Yeah,
did do it once or twice, of course, when he was at Renault. But I think he's good, but whether he a superstar, is he a consistent race winner? And I don't know, because he's definitely had the opportunity, but I don't know. And I've always liked Hull. I've always thought he was a decent driver, and he's always kind of been one of those ones that when a big seat comes up, they're like, oh, what about Hockenberg? What about Hockenberg? And but I think he's now getting to, obviously he's not getting old, in in quotation marks, but I think a lot of teams will be looking at either promoting youth,
yeah.
and I think his window for kind of getting a seat within one of the big teams is definitely closing. And but then going back to Red Bull, yeah, I don't, I'm not quite sure if I feel sorry for Pierre, because I don't know if he was ready for the Red Bull seat. I think they were probably taken. They would definitely were. We saw in the Netflix documentary that they were taken by surprise by Danny
Yeah,
saying he was leaving for Renault. I don't
yeah,
think they would have promoted Pierre like that season. I don't think they would have tossed Danny and brought up Pierre. I don't think they thought he was ready. But which makes this season pretty difficult for him, because I think if he is essentially in that same sort of position that Kvyat was in a few seasons
Yeah,
ago, where he gets put in and you're almost working on like a race for race basis of, oh, how's it, let's just keep an eye on how he's doing. And he said earlier in the season that the reason why he's struggling so much is because he's not getting the same responsiveness that he was in the Toro Rosso and in the Red Bull, and the car's not working the same way. He's having to brake a lot harder than he used to, and obviously the cars are set up differently. But we're now how many races into the season, and he's still not quite there. And
yeah,
yeah, how many does Helmut Marko, how many does Red Bull really want to give him? And I'm sure Christian Horner will come on all to the media channels and say, oh yeah, no, we're fully behind him. But I think
yeah.
when you've got the likes of Pato Award sitting there, they really like Dan Ticktum. Um, and I'm not sure if you've watched him. He's not quite in
I've
F3 yet.
seen some.
Yeah,
I've seen some races.
they've had their eye on Dan Ticktum definitely in a junior seat for a long time, and he's definitely got a personality. To me, he's got a massive attitude problem. In fact, he came out with a stupid comment today. So I think whether he's got that sort of mentality for Red Bull, because Red Bull seems to be quite like Mercedes, quite like a tight run ship when it comes to how they like their drivers to act and how they like them
Yeah,
to present themselves. So I think, yeah, Dan Tickton would definitely be a bit of a wild card for what they're used to. But yeah, I think Gasly's, I wouldn't say he's in trouble, but I'd say if he doesn't, the thing is that how what's the comparison? Because everyone's been saying that Max Verstappen is probably at the moment the second best driver on the grid, and you can't question really that Hamilton is any work, like he's
yeah,
not. Hamilton is the top dog. He's the one to beat, and Max is comfortably sort of dragging that Red Bull to
yeah.
positions that are slightly more elevated. He's beaten the Ferraris occasionally. He's beaten Bottas in Canada. And so what do you do? Do you compare Gasly up against Verstappen, or do you compare Gasly up against, say, his teammates from last season, and
Mm,
see if he's really getting any quicker? Because you look at it and he's not getting any quicker, and it's not that he's getting any quicker. He's not getting any quicker in practice or qualifying or the race. It's not like he's having bad qualifyings and good races, or good qualifying and bad races. It's pretty inconsistent the entire weekend. So I don't know how long they kind of they let him do that.
yeah, and Austria this weekend's Red Bull's home race, isn't it? And I'm sure they are not going to be best pleased if, say, Max is fighting for a podium and Pierre is down fighting for 10th or 11th place. It's not going to look good. It made me wonder at the weekend whether the Red Bull could be around like the McLaren Renault pace, but Max is just getting that much more out of it because Max is that much better. You just don't know because with the Honda power behind it, you just don't know how much better Max is. It's hard to compare Pierre to Max because Max has been in that seat for it's pretty much his team now, isn't it? Now Daniel Ricciardo's gone, it's the team built for Max Verstappen. They'll do their hardest to keep hold of their prize asset. They don't want him going to Ferrari or Mercedes. So for someone else to come in and to try and make an impression on somebody in somebody else's environment, it's bound to be a difficult pressure, bound to be a difficult position for Pierre. I a different. It's just, whether it's the pressure of a big team, like you say, he could have just gone into the team too early. I don't know. It could be ironic, couldn't it? We could end up having, for example, Kvyat swapping out with Pierre halfway through the season. How ironic would that be?
I don't know, but the thing is, yeah, some of the guys. So Nick just said could see Kvyat swapping with him halfway through the season. SJD says I think Albon might take it. I'd try Albon over Kvyat, and I don't, not because I don't think that Danny uh, couldn't do the job. I just think he had his opportunity at a top seat. Why not give it to someone like Albon, who's already shown this season that he's a young
Yeah,
driver that can fight through the field. We saw in China when he started in the pit lane and managed to finish in 10th that he can make moves, and he's not afraid to go after drivers. And although Kvyat seems to be getting Kvyat seems to have him slightly in qualifying. I think it is. I think he's got a 2/10 advantage overall as an aggregate. But I think they've been pretty much matched pace for pace. And there was plenty of jokes over the weekend when they were racing each other on the track that they were essentially racing for Pierre's seat. But the sad thing is, it's
yeah,
probably true.
yeah,
And yeah, SJD says that he thinks Albon might take Gasly back to Toro Rosso with Pato Award or Tictum alongside him, but I don't know. I can see them promoting Tictum onto, cause the problem with Dan Tictum, as Meg says, is well a mixture of dangerous and bad attitude.
yeah,
He's a fast driver, no doubt about that. He has to be in that position where Red Bull are happy to put everything behind him. But he's already been banned for I can't remember how long it was. Whether it was 6 months and have to retake his racing license because he actively went after another driver and took him out after being or feeling aggrieved for being spun out early in a race. Um, he's made several discouraging and disparaging comments about teammates whilst out in doing the Formula Asia series. He's just a little bit. I think Christian Horner's already said in I think in an interview of Autosport that he needs to wind his neck in, and he told him to. He famously where he lost out the I think it was the Euro F3 last season to Mick Schumacher, and Schumacher in the first half of the season wasn't doing anything. He was sort of top five, but not really challenging. Tictum had been winning a lot of races, but in the second half of the season, suddenly Schumacher just dominated, ended up going on and winning the championship. And Tictum, ever the gentleman, just claimed that it was rigged and that they'd been doing something to Schumacher's car to make him go quicker. So as opposed to just saying, "Oh, I probably wasn't as fast second half of the season because I got sloppy," he decided to call some sort of conspiracy theory against himself. So yeah, I don't know whether he's ready for Formula One. He definitely, if he's going to move up, I think Formula Two's probably the best place for him at the moment. But
yeah,
yeah, I think Gasly, yeah, going back, Gasly potentially back to Toro Rosso, but once we saw what that did to Kvyat, once you relegate a driver, he'll just lose all of his confidence, and I think we'll probably see him slip out of Formula One and probably back into WEC again or Formula E, because I think once you've had a seat like Red Bull to then lose that, especially if it's mid-season.
yeah,
If he lasts to the end of the season, maybe it's somewhat a little bit kind of nicer and gentler. But if it's mid-season that he gets replaced, I can't see Pierre lasting in Formula One too long, because I think it's we saw Danny, he had to take some time out, go back be a
yeah,
Ferrari sim driver, and yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what Red Bull have got up their sleeve for 2020.
yeah. I agree with everything you say there. With Dan Ticktum, just briefly finish this bit off. I can't see how they would bring someone who's as volatile as him into Max's environment. Because if they upset Max and he tries to go after Max to try and say, "Look, I'm here now," and try some crazy dive bomb on him and take Max out, that's gonna shatter all team morale, isn't it? And that's exactly what they don't need. Like you say, he's probably better off starting in F2 or something similar like that, and then working his way up and hopefully sorting any attitude out that he seems to be gathering. But yeah, it's probably a bit too soon for him in F1, but it's going to be really interesting from, say, next week onwards, what is going to happen with Pierre Gasly. Can he keep that seat or not?
Hmm. So moving on to some of the other points from the race on at the weekend, I've got three things here to talk about. Would like you to you can choose one yourself, or the guys can let us know what they'd like to hear about. I've got Hamilton's perfect weekend. Was the race boring or not? Seb's awful qualifying and then pretty dreary race, and the Ricardo penalty issue. So is there anything there that kind of takes your fancy? Anything that you think you've got an opinion on?
Um, Tough to say that, isn't it? Really. Be interested to see what the guys say. You could sit here and talk for the next half an hour about all of them. Um, yeah, we could jump on the bandwagon and say, like everybody's been saying for the last few days, F1's boring. French Grand Prix was boring, and Lewis Hamilton wins again. And yeah, in some aspects, I agree. The French Grand Prix was boring. Um, but like we were talking off air, if Ferrari had done that this weekend, we'd have been all hailing Ferrari. Ferrari's back. Ferrari's wrestled dominance off of Mercedes. So it's tough to say, really, isn't it? Where you go with it. Talking to Seb, where does he go after this weekend? It's qualifying. I don't know if he had a problem with the car or something, but no disrespect to my team, but to see himself qualified behind both my drivers is not exactly where he wants to be. Just I keep reading. For me, I don't know if you've seen anything yourself, mate, but I keep reading rumours, and again, I stress they are only rumours from what I understand, that retirement's on the cards. So it's it's all interesting at the front, despite Mercedes dominating so much. It's still very interesting because Ferrari just don't seem to be making any ground, and yeah, Bottas seems to have lost that edge he had at the beginning of the season. It's what are your thoughts on the French Grand Prix as a whole?
I think yeah, we were talking about it off air that I think objectively, F1 isn't boring. The race itself wasn't a spectacle at all. And it's frustrating. I can understand people's frustrations because no one likes to see a one-team dominance. I hated watching the Ferraris win in the early 2000s. I could not stand them, and I've never enjoyed Ferrari at all. I think they're an incredibly arrogant team that won't win another championship until they fundamentally change a lot of what they are. Um, but it's one of those things where Mercedes has got the fastest car with the fastest driver on the planet. They're gonna win, and they're gonna win a lot. And the problem is that people have got to accept it and just deal with it, or they've got to stop watching. And of course, you don't want to stop watching something you're passionate about, but like as SJD says, sometimes Real Madrid versus Barcelona ends in a 0-0. It's sport. Sometimes it will be boring. That's true. Like I mean, look, equate it to any other sport. Look at Scottish football at the moment. Celtic win everything every year, and they
Yeah,
have done I think for the last 8 years. And it's like you're always going to get a team or someone that is going to be at the top of their game. Look at like I mean it's not quite on the same level, but you look at someone like Federer, and I know you've had Djokovic and you've had Nadal and Murray that kind of like been alongside him, but if you equate like Djokovic and Nadal to Vettel and I'm trying to Verstappen or someone that almost on the level of the top guy but not quite, you've got Hamilton. He's going to be winning, and the unfortunate thing for Ferrari is they just haven't been able to bring they've built the car that can take him there, but they haven't got the brain power at the moment, it seems, in their strategy department to pull together some reasonable strategies to beat the Mercedes, whether it be I don't know, strategic battles on track. They're pulling out stupid pit stop strategies with Charles that drop him back down, like we saw in Canada, like we saw in China, and it's just I don't know. I think it's very easy to call F1 boring at the moment, and I was guilty at the weekend of sitting here and watching it, and I was just like, God, there is nothing happening here. And then at the end of the race, of course, and when we get onto it a second with Ricardo, there was the one move that happened that kind of got everyone excited, and it got missed by the cameras because we went on
Yeah.
screen to Charles not getting or a bit like having a slight look at Valtteri and but yeah, I think F1 just needs, and I can't remember who it was. I'll just scroll up quickly for the comments and have a look. But he said F1 just needs a couple more teams, and I think it was SJD that said it. But yeah, it does. It needs something injected into it to give it a little bit of life. It needs something, but I don't know. I don't think, and I think everyone is looking to these 2021 rules that they're going to be some sort of like minor miracle, and we're going to see like that the like the foundations of Formula One is going to be blown apart, and we're going to see this whole new like racing, and that's not going to happen. It's Ferrari and Mercedes aren't going to let this happen. They
No.
are quite happy having a two-horse race each season, and for Ferrari, they won't want any other teams to possibly get to a level where they can start challenging and make it a three, four, five-horse race for a championship, and that's the same in so many formula. Look at WEC, like Toyota are the only ones that go at the moment, and they still when they win, it's like a celebration. You're like, well, you're going, you've got Toyota number 7 against Toyota number 8. It's hardly it's like
Mm.
you can't say you're the
Yeah.
LMP1 champions. Like it's I don't know. It's teams will always look out for themselves. Um, but I think there's nothing in 2021 that's really kind of at the moment going to radicalize what we see. So I think until we see maybe some new engine providers come in, I don't know, maybe a real fundamental rule change that Mercedes and Ferrari are going to be at the top, and so people are going to have to deal with the fact that whilst we're in this turbo hybrid era, and the costs are so high, that these big teams like Ferrari, like Merc, like Red Bull, that have that capital and have that money to put into their facilities, whether it be development, whether it be staff, they will always be at the top. You're always going to have a top three consisting of one of those three manufacturers at the moment.
Mm. Yeah. I agree. You're absolutely bang on. So I was reading some of the comments, and I have to agree with SJD about that Perez penalty. Yes, he cut the corner, but he went the route the FIA told him to go, and he still got a penalty for it. Yeah, I'm sure he eventually ended up ahead of a few guys, but because it was weird, because he took the long way round, it still ended up in
See,
front of other people, but he did exactly what the FIA said to do.
see,
It was really bizarre, that.
I think that one is because I think there was something quite telling about that, because so many people, and I was looking on social media at the time and arguing, oh well, he went round the bollard, he had to go the long way round, and blah 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 blah. Well, that's fine, but if you listen to the race as it goes on, they go down and they speak to Crofty and Martin Brundle spoke to Otmar Schnafnauer afterwards, or during the race, and they said, oh, I guess you're not happy. He was like, oh no, he got pushed off track. And if you go on board with Sergio, he just outbrakes himself, so he doesn't get pushed
Right.
off track. He makes a mistake. So he makes a mistake. He then floors it to get around to the left to go around this bollard, as he's told to do, and he's perfectly within his right to do that. But I reckon if he'd been touched on like the rear wheel on either side, or forced off track, like legitimately forced off track, that if he returned back on track in front of someone, they probably wouldn't have given him the penalty. But he outbraked himself. So he outbrakes himself
I,
and then comes back on the track ahead of drivers that he was behind. So it's his mistake that he's then benefited from, if you get what I mean.
I'll be honest, I actually didn't see the onboard of Perez, so that is actually news to me. All I seen was him going across that runoff area and then round the bollard, so that probably does explain. why. But it's just bizarre, though, wasn't it? At the time, you're thinking he's done exactly what the FIA's told him to do, and he's still got a penalty for it. It just seems to be. Well, at the time, I thought FIA are just trying to shoot themselves in the foot for everything at the minute they're giving out, and. Yeah, but yeah, that with what you're saying, I probably have to agree with. Then, if it's down to his mistake, then yeah. But it's just funny, isn't it? How he goes the long way round, essentially, and gains places from it. It was truly bizarre. And do we go on to the next lot of penalties with regarding Ricardo? I think we
Yeah,
ought to
yeah.
talk
So
about that.
moving on to the penalty situation we saw at the end of the race, of course, Daniel Ricciardo slapped with two 5 second time penalties. Would love to know your thoughts because obviously it was your man that unfortunately it was Lando suffering with a pretty severe hydraulic pressure issue at the end of the race, and you could see he lost DRS. He started to lose power steering, and that car. I'm not sure if you watch. I guess you did watch a lot of the on board. Was just looking
Yeah.
like an absolute death trap to steer. You could see him really struggling to get the power down. It was moving around side to side across the track a lot. So yeah, what was your take on Daniel's move up into the end or the outside?
Well, Dan said after, I'm sure he said it to a Dutch TV. I understand the car isn't as good as a Red Bull, whereas I could dive down the inside and normally nail the overtake. And he said this time I'm diving down the inside or diving down the outside, and it's a gamble whether it pays off or not. Now, if he's already aware that it's a gamble whether it pays, I understand you've got to go for the move, like the famous Senna saying, you've got to go for a move. You have to. It's racing, isn't it? I understand that, but for me, he shouldn't have come on at the start. He should not have come back on the where he did. Well, tried to come back on where he did, which then made Lando having to react to it, which forced him off the track. Now, it's tough because I'd probably say out of the two penalties, I'd probably it's 50-50 on that one for me whether he would get a penalty or not for that. But the other one with Ricardo, he was all four wheels off the track for a considerable time before then making the move on Kimi. Now, I encourage racing. I'll always want people to race and overtake and stuff, even if it's against my guys or my guys or anybody, whoever. You've got to see racing in Formula One because that's what we're there to watch. But there's ways about doing it sometimes, and I think Dan had made the move and realised he made a mistake and then got desperate because he realised Kimi and his potential teammate was coming along, so just floored it and hoped for the best. Managed to keep ahead of Kimi, and eventually, not only did he cost himself with penalties through the FIA, but he also cost, well, I wouldn't say cost because as much, but he didn't help Lando as much because if Lando didn't have to move to one side just to get out of the way, he could have kept hold of one place more for that last half a lap. I don't know how bad the car was at that point. The car was pretty horrendous from what I'd seen, so who knows. But for me, Dan could have, in theory, waited until after that chicane and that long sweeping right-hander had a move done there. We've seen a few cars. I think George Russell did one on his teammate there during the race as well. So there was potential for him to do it there, and he'd have kept that seventh place, and no one would have been the wiser. But I just think, for me, he tried to do too much and then panicked a bit, and then tried to force the issue a bit more, and got himself in a bit of trouble. I don't know what your opinion on it is. For me at the time, I'm not going to lie, I was screaming blue murder. I wanted everything thrown at him. But that's just the heat of the moment, the passion for your team and stuff. But when you see the onboards and you listen to analysis after the race, you start to calm down a bit and think about it a bit more. Maybe 1 5-second penalty, but it's hard to say, really. I just think for me, he was too rash and too desperate to try and get the move done, and eventually just cost himself.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of smelling blood in the water. He knew that Lando's car, he would have been told by his engineers that Lando was struggling,
Yeah,
and I think he knew that that was probably his best opportunity. Of course, he could have made the move into scene if he tried, but it's a risky move, especially on a car that like, he doesn't he's been following Lando for a couple laps. He can see that Lando's moving around a lot on in the high speed corners and struggling to get the power down. That to go side by side, especially into a corner like scene, would have been risky, especially on the last lap. So I can understand why he went for the move, but the problem is that the FIA set that precedent of that penalty against Seb, is that
yes,
it was always going to come, no matter. I thought it was a bit
yeah,
harsh. I thought if there was contact, it probably was worth a penalty. I think if Lando wasn't over, if it was just those two fighting with each other, I don't think he would have been given a penalty. But I think because Lando ended up losing three positions, that
yeah,
the stewards probably saw it as the driver that was forced off track to avoiding action and subsequently lost quite a few positions. I thought the penalty for the overtake on Raikkonen was like you say, you always want to see racing, and it was a very brave overtake. He would have been on the marbles, it would have been dusty, but we've seen once again the precedent was sent. You saw Max in USA a few seasons ago when he made that overtake on Kimi on the final lap
yeah,
when he took
yeah. That's right.
the inside line, crossed the white line as he made the overtake, got a slap with a 5 second penalty. That's just a rule. You have to stay within the two white lines, and
Yeah,
although as SJD says that the overtake was actually done when he had the wheel fractionally touching the white line. He's driving off. Essentially, he's driving off of the track for an extended period of time, getting slipstream, which aids an overtake. And the overtake happened whilst in a position that was, well, what is deemed illegal. And yeah, so I don't know. They're brave. Two brave moves, but I think it was another one for Danny where it was just like yeah, perhaps it was just a little bit too brave, and yeah, it was a messy end to the race, but it was a fun. It was because I mean,
yes,
obviously, it's what everyone wanted to see. It was fun. It was we all want to see multiple cars and from multiple teams all fighting.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I think once you go off track to overtake someone, it's already been shown in previous races that you're going to get slapped for a penalty, and we saw from Canada, if you run someone offline after going off track yourself, you're going to pick up a penalty. He couldn't. The FIA wouldn't have been able to justify not giving him a penalty after what they did to Seb in Canada. It just wouldn't have made any sense. So
no.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because they'd have probably called the FIA inconsistent then, wouldn't they? And
yeah,
then
yeah,
there'd have been even more kicking off. I think personally, if Dan had have been in the Red Bull, which he's clearly more comfortable with in terms of his late dive bombs, he probably would have got that move done a lot cleaner, and all that messiness would never have happened. That Renault clearly for him is not quite. He's getting better with the car. You can see he's clearly getting better with the car now because he's obviously proven that in qualifying against his teammate and stuff. But it's just not quite where he wants it at the minute, is it, that Renault, compared to the Red Bull last year for his overtakes he loves to do, which he's really good at, by the way. But yeah, yeah, just a bit too much for me, and that's eventually what cost him. But like he said, he's got to go. He has to go for it because otherwise, why are you racing if you're not going for these moves? It's just it was just a bit too much from what he was trying, and ultimately, I think it was just about on the bubble level for being deserved. But like I say, the FIA had to really give it based on what happened in Canada.
yeah. It is a tricky one. Um, Talking about the FIA and how they've affected the season, the championship is it over? Is that it? Is
Yes,
Hamilton the drivers' champion or Mercedes
yes,
the constructors' champion? Because we look at the season, Lewis is I think that was his fourth win in a row, and he now leads the championship to Valtteri by 36 points. He's 76 ahead of Seb, and Mercedes have got 100. What is that? 140 point or 240 point lead in the constructors championship over Ferrari as well. Is that it? Do we call it
Yes,
curtains on the 2019
yes,
season?
yes. I can make that short and simple. Yes, I said 2 races back by the end of July. I think the race obviously it'll not be done and dusted, but I said then at the end of July the season will be done, and I think it's already pretty much close to being done now. To be fair, because I swear the one of the writers for Motorsport or someone like that said Ferrari have got this silver bullet to fix all their problems. Problem is, if that silver bullet comes 4, 6 weeks down the line, what's that going to solve? Yeah, they might make them quicker, but they'd be that far off the title race. Would there be any point? They may as well just, for me, Ferrari may as well, if nothing, if you're not going to get close to Mercedes in the next 3, 4 races, they may as well just start focusing on next year now because I don't see the point in trying to chase Mercedes down with this huge gap. Like, for me, it's all done. He looks good at the start of the year, and you thought, yeah, at least we're going to have a fight between two people. But Lewis has just grabbed hold of this championship now quite firmly, and he doesn't appear to be looking like he's going to let it go anytime soon. He dominated his teammate again this weekend, didn't he? I think he was what 12, 16 seconds ahead of Valtteri. So
Yeah,
you just
yeah. 18,
you
18
just
seconds across the line. So
there you
another
go.
dominant win from him. He was flawless. Almost picked up a grand slam. Just missed out in the last lap with Seb, who pitted on the penultimate lap for a flyer. But yeah, although he made that pit stop, Seb finished just 62 seconds off the lead, and so we take a pit stop off of that. That's still 44
Yeah,
seconds or so. So I don't know. Seb had one of those weekends that they were saying that his head looked down all week. He was. Did you? I'm not quite sure if you heard it or if the guys listened to it, but in qualifying, I believe they were going out in tandem. The Ferraris are going out, and he was going out ahead of Charles, and Charles was asking him to speed up, and his demeanor and then the way that his attitude on the radio was just it was so uh, down. It was just he just sounded fed up and like he just didn't want to be there. And you can understand his frustration. Obviously, lost his win, I don't know. Even still, like he just seems to at the moment have lost his edge, hasn't he?
yeah,
He's not the Sebastian Vettel that we've seen in previous seasons, and I think these mistakes that he made last season have kind of manifested into this sort of I don't know, almost defiant but quite grumpy Seb this season. I think we started the season early. I think he was relatively happy because he thought that Ferrari were going to hold pace with Mercedes, but they've just obviously Mercedes have done their thing, have moved on, and I don't even think they've really had any upgrades to the car that are significant yet. So I have no idea what's going to happen when they decide to bolt on an extra bit of downforce to that car or something because yeah, I think as you say, I think the championship's pretty much over. And Lewis would have to have an absolute meltdown late in the season
yeah,
if. But then I think was it last season or the season before we saw a double retirement from Mercedes at Austria. So it could happen in theory, but I don't know in practice. I think yeah, SJD says Vettel's clearly fallen out of love with F1, and yeah,
yeah,
it's
he
but the
has.
problem is that I would have said that about Lewis last season? There's points in last season where and when he was fighting with Nico in 2015, I thought it was 2015, 2016, where people were saying, oh, Lewis is going to go off, he's going to go do, he's got his outside projects that he gets on that. This is him done. He seems completely changed this season. He seems completely re-energized. The car is exactly. He said this weekend it's the first time that the car has really felt switched on for him. He hasn't liked the car so far this season. So yeah, I think that he's ready to switch up from fourth into fifth now. So unless the others are going to try and catch up, I think Austria is looking like it's
Yeah,
another power track. It's another track that suits the Mercedes style.
yep.
It's a track that Lewis has said that he's enjoyed racing around. So is he going to win five in a row? Is or I don't know. Is it's it's difficult, isn't it? Because you can you sympathise with Seb, but then equally, you, if he's gonna beat Lewis, he needs to do everything. And unfortunately, in France, he just his qualifying pretty much gave you the impression that he doesn't have it.
Yeah, I think Seb, he just needs he needs that love back, doesn't he? It's like when he was at Red Bull days, you could feel like you look at him, and he looked like he was part of a family, and it's just doesn't seem to be getting that at Ferrari, and it seems to be telling a lot this season that he's kind of just like drifted off from them and just kind of just like you say fell out of love with it all. Like I mentioned, the rumours of retirement and stuff. It makes you wonder. He's just recently got married. You'd have thought that'd have buoyed him up this weekend, being recently married and stuff. But yeah, it was just such an off race for Seb. It's a shame. Me personally, I do like Seb. I think he's a solid driver. Not many people I know do like him. He's a solid driver. He's a nice guy to meet. He's always got time for the fans and stuff. It's just yeah, there's just something there, isn't there, at the minute with Seb that's just not there. And I just think if he could right now, I think he would end this season right now and start fresh next season if he could. But obviously not able to do that. But at the minute, you say double attack. You said about the double attack with Mercedes. That car looks untouchable at the minute. Never mind a DNF. I can't see. Can't I personally? I'd be amazed if they get a DNF all season. To be fair, because that car is just it's the best that Mercedes has looked throughout the whole of this hybrid era, probably in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't think they've looked stronger. I think yeah unless they make a fundamental mistake, whether it be mechanical, whether it be a collision, I can't see anyone beating Mercedes in Austria. So I mean, looking forward to the Austrian Grand Prix. If we're saying that the Mercedes are more than likely going to lock out the front row, who's getting third on the podium? Is it going to be can Seb kind of pick his head up? Is Charles gonna kind of continue this little bit of a wave of form we saw? He had a good race, kind of chasing down Valtteri in the last laps or so. Max, it's his home Grand or one of his technically his home Grand Prix, has a huge Dutch following there. It's a home Grand Prix for Red Bull.
Yeah,
But he's already said that the Red Bull ring doesn't really suit the Red Bull. It's he was kind of lucky last season, but yeah. So where's essentially if we're saying that Mercedes is going to lock out the front row, where's third going?
I'd go with Charles again. Charles again. I said I'm sure I said him last week. Yeah, he seems at the minute just unfortunately for Seb, he just has the edge over Seb at the minute. Unless Seb can find find some confidence in that car, and if I bring any updates, I'll probably go with Charles again. Maybe Max pipping Seb to fourth, and probably Seb in fifth. I'd probably go with at the minute. It's just yeah, for me it'd be Lewis on pole. I'll be surprised if Bottas gets it. It'd be Lewis on pole, Bottas, and then Charles in third for me. What is
Hmm.
your opinion?
Well, I'm kind of inclined to agree with Nick because Nick says here that Bottas has got pole at Austria the last 2 years, so he does like the track. He's been well here, but I don't. I think Lewis at the moment he's on a different planet compared to everyone
Yeah,
else. So
yeah,
and he seems to, although Bottas is definitely his closest rival, he does seem to have been beaten into submission a little bit over the last few races. I think
yeah,
you saw the early part of the season he picked up the win in Australia and oh, I can't
yeah,
remember, was it China or Baku, and yeah, but I think after that, I think Lewis has kind of just reasserted dominance in the team. He's been completely untouchable. So I can't look past Lewis for the win. Um, it'll be interesting to see what Seb can do at the weekend, whether he can kind of pick his head up, keep going again, or I don't know. I'm hoping Charles kind of can continue his good form because he was given a better strategy this week in France, and he almost caught Valtteri at the end. And yes, Valtteri was struggling towards the end of the race, but I think Charles was definitely still there. So I think Ferrari need to possibly look at, although Seb's leading, he's 13 points ahead of Charles in the championship. I think they might need to start looking towards the future, because if these rumours are true, and obviously we're not giving them any credence, and not saying that there's any potential they are, but if potentially Seb is looking at stepping away from Formula One, and then they have to look at Charles being potentially the number one driver and giving him the opportunity at challenging people like Valtteri. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is where I said earlier that I think Ferrari need a fundamental change of the way they work, and maybe a look towards the youth, and not having a guaranteed 1 and 2 driver or something like that, where they need to possibly just, I don't know, mix it up a little bit, make it a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah, change up how their work ethic. And so yeah, I don't know. But then looking down through the grid, and we'll just quickly go over. Obviously, we opened up the podcast talking about McLaren. Where are we thinking McLaren are going to end up in Austria? Because I think there's a couple of teams that I think they've had a poor couple of races, and that's Toro Rosso and Haas, and they're two cars and 4 drivers that they they're definitely one of those ones where you can always get, like, one of them you'll always see kind of makes a shock appearance in the top 10 in qualifying. So is it going to be McLaren kind of in that third or fourth row with the Red Bulls, or is it, I don't know, will we see the Renaults up there? Who's going to be just competing with Gasly essentially, won't it? It will be.
Yeah. For, based on what we've just seen, you're going to have to say it's between McLaren and Renault leading the midfield at the minute. God only knows what's happened to Haas. They have just gone way off the boil, haven't they? At the minute, I don't understand what's gone off there. They were so far off the pace at the weekend. You don't quite know what's changing, whether updates haven't worked, or I don't really know. Toro Rosso, like you say, they've just slipped back a little bit. Alfa Romeo picked up a few points with Kimi, so that was good for them. But for me, at the minute, yeah, it's between McLaren and Renault fighting for that 4th spot in the championship. Currently, McLaren is edging it. It'd be interesting to see this weekend to see how close they are, because they were pretty close in qualifying and stuff like that. But yeah, Carlos Sainz, you forget Carlos Sainz was a bit ahead of them. It's going to be, like I said at the beginning of the program, it seems to be track specific at the minute for the midfield team. So you don't know. I could be completely wrong, and Haas could come out of nowhere this weekend and do something spectacular. But for me, it has to be McLaren and Renault that you'd be looking at to lead the so-called midfield. The
Yeah.
midfield championship.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, because obviously power circuit, so it will be good to see what the cars can do, whether when anyone brings any updates, and what the downforce is like, because obviously it's one of those tracks where its setup is pretty key, because obviously very slippery down the straights, but then you've got a lot of heavy braking points. So yeah, I think potential for a lot of manufacturers to be in that Q3 and fighting around sort of I think the fight for the final positions, like 9th, 10th, around there, is going to be interesting. I think, yeah, you can throw the Alphas in there. You can throw the Toro Rossos, the Renaults, all of them. So yeah, I think Austria is shaping up to be a lot more. I think it's one of those tracks that kind of promotes a lot closer racing as well, because you do have those straights. You get a lot of there's a lot of
Yeah.
DRS and overtaking positions as well, and also just the shape of the track kind of promotes closer racing. There's a lot less sort of those medium extended or medium speed extended corners like France have, which drivers complain that you can't follow cars in. So yeah, I think potentially we're going to see a much better race, which I think is needed. I think F1 needs to
Yeah.
see a race, and whether, even if it's not at the top, even if Lewis or Valtteri or even with one of the Ferraris absolutely walk it. I think if we see a close battle in the midfield, I think it will kind of raise people's spirits a little bit. So yeah, looking forward to Austria, hopefully to be a decent one. So
Yes.
what we'll do is we'll consciously we decided to try and wrap this up around the hour mark if possible, so we don't keep you all waiting around and listening. You can get on with your evenings, with your days, whatever you're getting on with. What we will do though is our new big question, which is where I ask
Uh-oh.
Sab something and he has 1 minute to give me his answer and explain why he's given that answer.
Uh-oh.
Uh, so Sab, your 1 minute is ready to start with. You give me what your biggest disappointment has been so far of the F1 2019 season.
That's quite easy for me actually. There's not been enough competition at the front fighting for wins. Just don't get me wrong, Mercedes have got it right, and you can't fault them for what they've done. But I would like more fighting for wins. At the minute, myself and a lot of friends I know, only tend to watch the midfield fight. So for me, it's a quite straightforward answer that I would like to see closer racing at the front of the grid as well as the midfield.
Oh, 27 seconds there. Didn't even need the full minute. Yeah, it's it's one of those ones. It's yeah, SJD. He's got another good answer. Their biggest disappointment, Williams. That's a great answer. A historic team, unfortunately, really struggling. And yeah, I would agree. I think Williams is definitely up there with being one of the biggest disappointments. I think track wise is possibly some of the tracks. So you could put the stewarding decisions in there. I think there's been plenty of disappointments so far this season. I think, like we said earlier, the F1 definitely needs something radically changed about it. But then
Yeah,
who can say what? So because of course everyone's got a different opinion on where they'd like the series to go. So yeah, it's one of those ones where you look at it and objectively, we'll all still watch it. We know we'll all still watch
yeah,
it, but
yeah.
it's like it's like watching torture. Sometimes you just want it to stop, or you just it's and talking about like and looking at like SJD's answer, which is about Williams, and I feel the same like that. It's so disappointing to watch where Williams are, and it's frustrating because they seem to have they went through a period in the early like the early 2010s where they kind of slowly started to come back, and then unfortunately they've just slipped further and further back, and the budget cap has really hit them hard, and yeah, it's I think that would probably be my answer is they just there's something wrong there at Grove, and unfortunately until they can really bring in a big sponsor or maybe some new whether it be a commercial ownership or something. I don't want to see Williams leave the grid. I think that one of you need to keep the iconic names.
Yes,
Um,
I agree.
if anything, I'd like to see some more come back, but yeah, I think they definitely need some help, whether it be something like a Williams BMW partnership, or if we see someone like Porsche enter in a few years' time or something like that, maybe that can reinvigorate the team. But yeah, I think Williams would definitely be up there for me. But yeah, I think that wraps us up for tonight. Oh, and for the podcast, guys. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for all your wisdom, Sab. It's always good of a very McLaren central and themed podcast to pick your brain. Where can
Thank
people
you.
find you on social media?
So if you want to follow me on Twitter, it'll be at Alan Sabatino. That'll be the best place to follow me. I am on Instagram as well, the same tag, but mainly I use Twitter if you ever want to get in touch with me through social media.
Yeah, and you can catch me on Twitter at GT2 underscore driving. and GT_Hall89 on Instagram. So yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. It's been a pleasure having you in the comments. Great to see you all chatting and letting us know your thoughts. It's always good to find out what you lot are thinking. And we will be back for episode 4 next week. And keep an eye on the Twitter for Invictus Racing League at Invictus RL on Twitter, where hopefully we'll be looking at announcing the calendar and the driver pairings and teams in the coming week and a half. Of course, we've got F1 2019 coming out. The first edition, or the Legend edition, came out today, and the main one comes out on Friday, I believe it is. So yeah, so we'll probably have our first impressions of F1 2019 next week, which we will bring to you most likely on Tuesday. But if not, check the Twitter and we will get in touch. So yeah, have a good week, guys, and we will see you next time.